Bruce Brodoff is going to come up and speak for Dennis Pinkham today, who Dennis had another commitment on the role of the External Affairs Advisor. Thanks, Bruce.
Thank you. No.
So I'll close it there.
Yeah, that's good. Good morning, everybody. I'm Bruce Brodoff, External Affairs Specialist in Region 1. I'm here on behalf of Dennis Pinkham. Dennis would primarily be the External Affairs Advisor at the RRCC. He's at an External Affairs meeting in Mount Weather right now, so I'm taking his place. I've also been the role as the IMAT External Affairs Officer, and I've been deployed on other disasters out of the region, so I kind of have a decent background in this. So basically the role of the External Affairs Advisor at the RRCC is to provide critical information to the RRCC Chief, as well as to oversee the ESF Emergency Support Function 15. ESF 15 was created to ensure that the collection and dissemination of critical information is done in a coordinated and comprehensive fashion. This support function has a number of different components. They include the Joint Information Center, Congressional Affairs, Intergovernmental Affairs, Tribal Relations, and Private Sector Relations. So there's slightly different protocols for notice and non-notice events, but the primary goal for the External Affairs Advisor and the External Affairs Unit is to make sure that, is to effectively monitor, create, and disseminate information to emergency management officials, elected officials, survivors, the media, and the general public. So the first thing that we'll do is the External Affairs Advisor will work with a resource manager to staff the RRCC. Our staffing plan right now for an RRCC is 8 people. At this early stage of an incident, we could also work with headquarters to help beef up staffing as needed. A couple of those people, first thing that they'll do, they'll be involved with setting up a mini Joint Information Center. This is pretty much the heartbeat of the operation. It's the component that handles media inquiries. We'll monitor the media for situational awareness, and also to make sure that information is being correctly reported. And we also work very closely with state emergency management officials and their PIOs to make sure that the information that we're putting out is correct and synchronized. At this early stage, we're not really talking about what FEMA is doing. We're just supporting the state and their messaging. Again, if it's an event notice like a hurricane coming up the coast, primarily we'll just help support the state with their, let's say, their evacuation information. Preparedness information. We can help support them in that. If it's a no-notice event and the situation is more critical, we'll work with them on getting out information to survivors regarding more critical, life-saving kind of information, evacuation routes, sheltering, things like that. So we disseminate this information in a number of different ways. We could do press releases, we can do media call-outs, we can do postings on social media, and also media interviews. We'll work closely with the state. Sometimes they'll want to do press conferences. So if available, the RA or an FCO or a deputy FCO will handle the press conference from the federal side. Sometimes it does fall on the External Affairs Advisor or the IMAT EAO to handle that as well. So we also support the situational awareness and planning units with information. A lot of that we get with social media or through social media. Social media has become a very important component in information gathering and dissemination. We'll have a specialist that can continuously monitor various social media channels, look for information that's being retweeted a lot. They'll monitor certain channels like the State Emergency Management Agency or the Governor's Office, their social media feeds to just gather information and vet information. I just noticed having social media and people in the affected areas feeding information is really interesting and really important. I remembered a few years ago when the marathon bombing happened, Eilish Maynard, our previous social media specialist, was hearing some chatter before it even hit the news, the radio, the television, and she went on and she was hearing something about something happened, and we went on Twitter not even minutes after the event happened and before it even hit the news, and there were pictures, graphic, gory pictures of people that were in office buildings across the street or directly below the first bombing site, and that's how we were starting to get our information. So it's pretty important. We're able to make note of popular topics, and again, check the state EMA Twitter feeds and the governor's Twitter feeds, searching for eyewitness reports of the current situation, physical damage. We'll also probably have Dominic, our visual, what's the visual media specialist?
It's external affairs technical specialist.
Right. And we'll probably have him out in the field in some of the affected areas with his cameras and video cameras, and basically taking footage that he can send back in real time, some visuals and information for us. So that would be part of our operation. All of this also allows us to prepare information for any inbound IMAT teams, external affairs directors or team leads that might be coming in. Another really big function, really important and really challenging, is dealing with elected officials during a disaster, particularly the congressional delegations. Congress people are pretty much the first to contact FEMA. They want information. Either they want to have information so that they can give to their constituents, or they've got constituent issues that they want to contact FEMA about and get answers about. And believe it or not, sometimes some of this is politically driven, so it's really challenging to deal with them. And luckily, we have two of FEMA's best congressional liaisons. We have Jeff Killian and Diego Alvarado that will handle congressional relations. And basically, they have things well in hand. A lot of the things that we do for congressional relations, Jeb and Diego will answer congressional inquiries. They can prepare fact sheets and talking points, and a lot of the times we'll have 1 or 2 daily conference calls with congressional leaders and staff members. So we try to keep them really in the loop, really informed, because they can be very active and very forceful during disasters. So we'd like to keep them informed and in the loop. Some of the things that we'll also do, we'll coordinate with other federal agencies to find out what they are doing and to coordinate our own messages and to create an initial federal strategic communications plan in the early stages of a disaster. Some of the agencies that we work with, primarily the Army Corps of Engineers, the Department of Transportation, and the Department of Energy. So we'll be working with their external affairs people as well in the early parts of an incident. We also stay in touch with the affected state, local, tribal, and private sector counterparts. Working with the private sector has become really important. They're a really important partner in disaster response and recovery. A lot of times there's a cascading impact to survivors if the private sector isn't up and running and can't open up their stores and provide the critical commodities that survivors need. So there's a great need to determine how and where private sector is up and running, who's online and who's not. So we'll be working with our private sector partners to get that information. It will help provide information to survivors, and also can help the emergency management planners and with the operational needs. We can have a better idea of what affected areas are being serviced or back online, where to bring resources to areas that are maybe have a greater impact. So basically, those are some of the main things that we do as the External Affairs Unit at an RRCC. Don't want to take up much more of your time, so I don't know if anybody has any questions. That's kind of the quick overview.
So Bruce, you just mentioned probably the big buzzword right now is the private sector. And so what is our plan from external affairs position on how we're going to get those private sector parties to the table so we can find out what's going on in their world, what their status is?
We've been having meetings with some of the larger ones in the region. We're working with headquarters, actually with WebEOC. They've created some sort of proposed, for lack of a better word, a dashboard that I believe that we could be working with the private sector partners with a component on WebEOC that will allow them to directly input information to us that we'd be able to see and use at the RRCC and during an operation. So that's still in the discussion stage. But headquarters has a protocol, not a protocol, a prototype. None of the other regions have picked up on it. It's kind of gathering dust. So I had a pretty interesting conversation with the FEMA's director, or the guy that's in charge of WebEOC for FEMA. And in the next couple of weeks, we'll try to solidify a pilot program here.
So ultimately, though, the best way is to communicate directly with them. I'll be honest with you, I'm not a huge fan of private sector dialing into WebEOC to just get information that we need on what's going on in the real world.
Okay.
So, you know, what's the plan for doing that? Is it going to be here at the region, or is it going to be at the NRCC, at the private sector desk there? Because I see two things happening.
Mhm.
They're doing one thing at headquarters, reaching out. You guys are reaching out, and we're reaching out. And I'm reaching out every day. I mean, I'm communicating with different folks every day to find out what their capabilities are. So we need to close the loop on that,
Okay.
otherwise we
And
end
Scott,
up.
it actually goes, in my opinion, it goes even another step further than that, which is the state.
Microphone.
Sorry. The-
What you were just talking about, it goes a step further, because the state EOC is also coordinating with their own, they have their own private sector interactions.
So that's my biggest concern, is that we're treading all over the responsibilities at the local and state level, and we're in everybody else's business. And it's good to have the situational awareness, but we're doing decision-making at different levels of this agency. At the federal level, at headquarters, they're making decisions based on communications with Walmart and Waffle House and everybody else.
Right.
We don't have Waffle House up here, so we
Right.
gotta
Well,
find another niche.
Right. Well, I agree with you, and I'd love to let's take this offline, because I know even the phone call that, I had a conference call with the Chief Technology Officer of FEMA, and there were about something that we want to do here in the region. And he was excited because they've got thoughts and they've got ideas. We had 18 people from 15 different divisions of FEMA on this conference call, and it became a little, I don't want to say convoluted, but we were trying to focus on things. So we can take this offline and meet and further the effort. All right.
One other question?
Sure.
As I'm continuing to transition from my previous role to my new role, one of the things that I was always very used to in the field is the involvement of the media directly in what we're doing, and their interest in FEMA operations, and the requirement to support press conferences and those things.
Embed reporters.
Yeah, is there ever any interest from the media on putting people in the RFCC, or having press conferences there, or that kind of thing?
I mean, we've done it before. It depends. I mean, we are open. I know one of the things that I got dinged on, because I wasn't 100% sure a while ago, was, we got a call from a reporter that they want to embed with a team that's going out, and my red flag goes up immediately. But headquarters is sure, it's part of what we do and part of the transparency of our operations. So we accommodate them whenever we can, unless it's really life-threatening or something like that. Thank you, everybody.